The alien princess collapsed against the bulkhead, purple blood streaming from the gash across her torso. Her silver skin had turned ashen, her breathing shallow and erratic. The ship shuddered around them as another explosion rocked the hull. Lieutenant Jake Morrison dropped beside her, his rifle clattering to the deck. He'd seen enough combat wounds to know she had minutes, maybe less. "Stay with me," he said, though he had no idea if she understood English. Her eyes, brilliant gold with vertical pupils, focused on him. She spoke, the words musical but desperate. The translator in his helmet crackled to life. "My people need Protocol 17. Jake didn't know what that meant. He pressed his hands against her wound, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. Her anatomy was all wrong. Nothing like the field medicine he'd trained for. The ship lurched violently. Through the viewport, he saw 3 Krellian destroyers closing in, their weapons charging for another volley. The diplomatic vessel had no defenses, no escape pods left. The delegation was dead. The guards were dead. It was just him and her now. "I can't stop it," Jake said, his voice tight. "I don't know how to help you." Her hand, 4 fingers instead of 5, gripped his wrist with surprising strength. She pulled his hand to her face, pressed his bloodied palm against her mouth. Her eyes locked onto his. "Blood," the translator said. "Human blood. Compatible, rare." Jake understood in an instant. He didn't hesitate. He yanked the combat knife from his belt and slashed across his forearm. Blood welled up immediately, crimson against his tan skin. He pressed the wound directly to hers, letting his blood flow into the gash. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Her body convulsed. Her skin rippled with silver light. The wound began to seal itself, new tissue growing at impossible speed. But something else was happening too. Her veins, visible beneath translucent skin, began to glow red. Human red, she screamed. The sound pierced through the chaos of dying ship systems and distant explosions. Her back arched. Her fingers dug into the deck plating, leaving grooves in the metal. Jake tried to pull away, but she grabbed his arm with both hands, holding his bleeding wound against hers. Her body temperature spiked. He could feel the heat radiating off her. Then the ship's emergency lights cut out completely. In the darkness, her eyes blazed gold. "What's happening to you?" Jake demanded. She released him suddenly, pushing herself upright in one fluid motion. The wound was completely gone, but when she looked at him, something had changed in her expression. Something predatory, something new. "I am Lyra, 7th heir of the Sindari throne," she said in perfect, unaccented English, "and you just made me something impossible." The ship shook again, closer this time. "We have 30 seconds before hull breach," she continued, her voice steady and cold. "Do exactly what I say, human, and we might survive this." Asterisk, field name. When a human warrior gave his blood to a dying alien princess, what happened next? Shocked, she grabbed Jake's rifle from the deck and sprinted toward the bridge, her movements impossibly fast. Jake chased after her, his arm still bleeding, his mind reeling. "What did my blood do to you?" he shouted. She didn't answer. She reached the bridge door and punched through the access panel with her bare fist. Sparks flew. The door hissed open. The bridge was a graveyard. Bodies in elegant robes lay scattered across the floor. The view screen showed the Krellian destroyers forming a triangular attack pattern, weapons hot. 20 seconds to firing range. Lyra vaulted over a dead pilot and slid into the captain's chair. Her fingers danced across the control panel, moving faster than Jake could follow. The console light shifted from red to amber. "Your blood carries something my people lost 3,000 years ago," she said, her eyes never leaving the controls. "Aggression, adrenaline. The will to fight instead of flee." The ship's engines roared to life. Jake felt the deck vibrate beneath his boots. "We're a dying race, Lieutenant Morrison. We evolved past violence, past rage, past survival instinct. It made us wise. It made us peaceful. It made us weak." She pulled back on the throttle. The diplomatic vessel, never meant for combat maneuvers, screamed in protest as it rolled hard to starboard. The first volley from the Krellian destroyers missed by meters. "But your species," Lyra continued, her voice taking on an edge that sounded almost hungry, "you still have the fire, the fury, the absolute refusal to die quietly." Jake grabbed a support rail as the ship inverted. Through the viewport he saw the lead Krellian destroyer rushing toward them, collision imminent. "You're insane," he yelled. "Pull up." "Trust me," Lyra said. She didn't pull up. She accelerated. The Krellian ship tried to adjust, but it was too slow, too predictable. Lyra waited until the last possible second, then rolled the diplomatic vessel 90 degrees. They threaded through a gap Jake would have sworn didn't exist. The Krellian destroyer's wing clipped its own escort. Both ships erupted in brilliant orange fireballs. One enemy left. Lyra brought the ship around in a spiral that should have torn the hull apart. Inertial dampeners screamed. Jake's vision blurred from the GOG forces, but Lyra sat perfectly still, perfectly focused, her enhanced body handling stress that would have killed her 10 minutes ago. "We have no weapons," Jake said through gritted teeth. "How do we fight?" Lyra's smile was terrifying. It was human. It was predatory. It was wrong on her delicate alien features. "We ram them." She pushed the engines to maximum. The diplomatic vessel shook violently. Hull plates began to peel away. The temperature inside the bridge climbed rapidly. The last Krellian destroyer fired everything it had. Energy beams lanced through space. Lyra dodged 3, 4, 5. The sixth grazed their port side, tearing a 30-meter gash in the hull. Atmosphere vented into the void. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. The bridge sealed itself. 10 seconds to impact, Lyra announced calmly. Jake watched the Krellian ship grow larger on the view screen. He could see individual windows, individual weapons ports, individual crew members scrambling in panic behind the bridge viewport. 5 seconds. He thought about his family back on Earth, about the war that had dragged humanity into the stars, about the peace treaty this diplomatic mission was supposed to secure. 2 seconds. Lyra's hand shot out and grabbed his. Her skin was hot. Her grip was iron. "Hold on, warrior," she said. At the last instant, she fired the emergency thrusters. The diplomatic vessel spun like a top, its reinforced keel smashing into the Krellian destroyer's bridge. Metal screamed, glass shattered. The enemy ship split in half. The diplomatic vessel tumbled through the debris field, alarms shrieking. Lyra fought the controls, bringing them out of the spin. The engines sputtered, died. Emergency power kicked in. They drifted in silence. Through the viewport, Jake saw both halves of the Krellian destroyer float past, burning. No survivors, no pursuit, just wreckage and stars. "We did it," Jake breathed. Lyra released his hand and stood. She walked to the center of the bridge, her movements graceful despite everything they'd just endured. She looked at her hands, turning them over slowly. The red glow in her veins had faded, but Jake could still see traces of it beneath her silver skin. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said quietly, "do you understand what you've done? Saved your life." She shook her head. "You've changed me, changed what I am. My people have laws against genetic contamination, ancient laws, sacred laws. Will they punish you?" Lyra looked at him with those brilliant gold eyes. "Punish me? No. They'll study me. They'll fear me. They'll wonder if I'm still Sindari or something new entirely. She walked to him and placed a hand on his chest. He could feel the heat radiating from her palm. But more importantly, Lieutenant, they'll want to know if what happened to me can happen to others, if human blood can give my entire species back what we lost. Jake felt ice in his stomach. That's not possible, is it? Before today, I would have said no. Now, she stepped back. Now I don't know what's possible anymore. The communication panel crackled to life. A voice spoke in the flowing Sindari language. Lyra answered, her tone formal and controlled. She turned to Jake. Our rescue ship is inbound. Sindari military. They detected the battle. They're demanding to know what happened. What are you going to tell them? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. The truth, that a human warrior saved the seventh heir with his blood, that the impossible became real, that everything is about to change. She walked back to the captain's chair and sat down, suddenly looking exhausted. The adrenaline was fading. The human fire in her blood was cooling. They'll bring you before the council, she said, the highest authority in the Sindari Empire. They'll have questions, many questions, and if I don't want to answer them, her smile returned, but this time it was sad. Then they'll ask anyway. You saved my life, Lieutenant Morrison, but you may have also started something far bigger than either of us can control. Through the viewport, Jake saw lights approaching, dozens of them. A fleet. The rescue had arrived. But somehow Jake had the feeling they were both about to become prisoners. Asterisk feel name. When a human warrior gave his blood to a dying alien princess, what happened next shocked all. Txt. The Sindari warship was nothing like the diplomatic vessel. It was massive, sleek, and hummed with barely contained power. Jake and Lyra were separated the moment they boarded. Guards in silver armor escorted him through corridors that glowed with bioluminescent patterns, their weapons trained on him the entire time. They brought him to a holding cell that was more luxurious than threatening. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, a viewport showing the starfield outside. But the door was sealed, and Jake knew he wasn't leaving until they decided to let him. He sat for 3 hours before the door opened. The being that entered was tall, even for a Sindari. His skin was platinum instead of silver, marked with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow. His robes were deep blue, adorned with symbols Jake didn't recognize. Authority radiated from him like heat. Lieutenant Jake Morrison of Earth, the being said in flawless English. I am High Chancellor Vex, primary advisor to the Sindari throne. We need to talk. Jake stood. Where's Lyra? The princess is being examined by our physicians. What you did to her is unprecedented, alarming, potentially catastrophic. I saved her life. You contaminated royal blood with human genetic material, Vex said coldly. You've created something that shouldn't exist. Do you understand the magnitude of what you've done? Jake's jaw tightened. I understand I watched your people die because they couldn't defend themselves. I understand your princess would be dead if I hadn't acted. If that's contamination, then I'm guilty. Vex studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. Good. You have spirit. That's exactly what we need to understand. He gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the air between them. It showed a double helix, but the structure was wrong, incomplete, damaged. This is Sindari DNA, Vex explained. 3,000 years ago, my people made a choice. We used genetic engineering to remove what we called the savage genes. Aggression, territorial instinct, the capacity for rage. We believed these traits were holding us back from true enlightenment. The hologram shifted, showing another strand wrapping around the first, human DNA. Red where the Sindari was silver. What we didn't realize was that we were removing our survival instinct, our ability to fight, our will to endure against impossible odds. Within 2 generations, we became pacifists. Within 10, we couldn't even conceive of violence. We became philosophers, artists, scientists. But we also became prey. Jake watched the 2 DNA strands merge in the hologram. The result glowed with hybrid vigor. The Krellians knew this, Vex continued. They've been circling us for decades, testing our defenses, raiding our colonies. They know we can't fight back, won't fight back. Our ships are fast, our shields are strong, but we have no offensive capabilities. No warriors, no soldiers. We can only run. Until now, Jake said quietly. Vex nodded. Until Princess Lyra received your blood, our physicians have run every test imaginable. The results are extraordinary. Your blood didn't just heal her wound. It rewrote portions of her genetic code. The savage genes have been reintroduced. She has adrenaline production, heightened reflexes, increased aggression response. She's become what my people were before we neutered ourselves. She can fight. She can kill, Vex corrected. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Sindari has the capacity for lethal violence. The question is whether this is salvation or damnation. The hologram vanished. Vex walked to the viewport, his hands clasped behind his back. There's a faction in our government that wants you executed immediately. They see you as a virus, a contaminant that could destroy everything we've become. They fear what would happen if more Sindari were exposed to human blood. They fear we might devolve into savages. And what do you think? Jake asked. Vex turned to face him. I think the Krellians are planning a full invasion. I think without the ability to defend ourselves, the Sindari Empire will fall within a year. I think your species has something we desperately need, and pride is a luxury we can't afford. He stepped closer. But I also think we need to be very careful. What happened to Princess Lyra was accidental, uncontrolled. If we're going to pursue this path deliberately, we need to understand the risks, the consequences, the price. What are you asking me? I'm asking you to help us. Work with our scientists. Let us study your blood, your genetics, your biology. Help us understand how to give my people back what we lost without destroying who we are. Jake thought about it, about Earth, about the fragile alliance between humans and Sindari, about what might happen if this went wrong. I need guarantees, he said. I want to see Lyra. I want contact with Earth Command, and I want assurances that this won't be weaponized against humanity. Vex smiled again. You negotiate like a warrior, Lieutenant. I can agree to your first 2 demands. The third is more complicated. If this works, if we can restore our ability to fight, it will change the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity will no longer be the only young species with teeth. That doesn't answer my question. No, Vex admitted. It doesn't, because I can't make promises about the future. What I can tell you is that right now, the Sindari need humanity more than humanity needs us. That gives you leverage. Use it wisely. The door opened. 2 guards entered, but their weapons were lowered. Come, Vex said. The princess has requested your presence. She has something to show you. They walked through the ship, drawing stares from every Sindari they passed. Jake could feel the weight of their attention. Fear, curiosity, disgust, hope, all mixed together. Vex led him to a massive chamber at the ship's core. The walls were transparent, showing the void outside. In the center of the room, Lyra stood on a raised platform. She wore combat armor now, silver and crimson. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes blazed with intensity. Around her, arranged in a circle, stood 50 Sindari soldiers. They watched her with expressions Jake couldn't read. "What is this?" he asked. "A demonstration," Vex said. "Watch." Lyra raised her hand. A combat drone materialized above her, weapons active. It fired. She moved. Jake had seen human soldiers in action. He'd fought alongside the best Earth had to offer. But what Lyra did was beyond anything he'd witnessed. She dodged the first 3 shots without seeming to try. The 4th she deflected with a gauntleted forearm. The 5th she caught in mid-air, the energy bolt dissolving in her palm. Then she attacked. She leaped 15 feet straight up, grabbed the drone, and tore it in half with her bare hands. The wreckage fell to the platform with a crash. Silence filled the chamber. Lyra looked directly at Jake. "This is what your blood made me. This is what I've become." She turned to the gathered soldiers. "And this is what all of you could become." One of the soldiers stepped forward. She was young, her silver skin unmarked by the patterns of age. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Princess Lyra, what you're suggesting violates the genetic sanctity accords. It goes against 3,000 years of evolution. It's heresy." Lyra descended from the platform. She walked to the young soldier and placed a hand on her shoulder. 3,000 years ago, our ancestors made a choice they thought would save us. Instead, it condemned us to slow extinction. The Krellians aren't the only threat. There are a dozen species out there who see us as weak, as targets, as resources to be harvested. She looked around at all the assembled soldiers. "I'm not asking you to abandon who we are. I'm asking you to reclaim what we lost, to become complete again, to be warriors and philosophers, fighters and artists, to be Sindari who can defend themselves and everything we've built." Another soldier spoke, this one older. "And if we become monsters? And if the savage genes turn us into killers?" Lyra pointed at Jake. "Then we look to humanity. They have the savage genes. They have aggression and violence and rage, but they also have honor, mercy, love. They haven't lost their capacity for creation or compassion. They're proof that we can have both." The chamber erupted in voices, arguments, debates, fear and hope clashing. Vex leaned close to Jake. "Welcome to the beginning of a revolution, Lieutenant. Whether it ends in salvation or catastrophe remains to be seen." Jake watched Lyra command the room with her presence. She was still Sindari, but she was also something new, something hybrid, something that shouldn't exist. And somehow, Jake knew his life would never be the same. Asterisk, field name. When a human warrior gave his blood to a dying alien princess, what happened next shocked all. .txt. The next 48 hours were chaos. Jake was moved to a research facility buried deep within the Sindari flagship. Teams of physicians and geneticists subjected him to endless tests, blood samples, tissue samples, neural scans. They analyzed everything, their instruments humming and chirping in languages Jake didn't understand. But it was the conversations that unsettled him most. Dr. Kale, the lead geneticist, was a nervous being with trembling hands and eyes that darted constantly. He approached Jake during a rest period, a data pad clutched to his chest. "Lieutenant Morrison, I need to show you something the High Chancellor doesn't know yet." Jake sat up from the medical bed. "What is it?" Kyle activated the data pad. A molecular structure rotated in 3 dimensions above the screen. We've discovered that your blood doesn't just restore the savage genes. It does something far more complex. It's rewriting Sindari cellular memory, unlocking dormant genetic sequences we thought were lost forever. Is that bad? I don't know, Kale admitted. But here's what concerns me. We tested your blood compatibility with 20 volunteer subjects. 19 showed the same positive response as Princess Lyra. Enhanced reflexes, increased aggression, restored survival instinct. And the 20th? Kale's hand shook harder. The 20th subject went into shock. Her body rejected the human DNA violently. She survived, but barely. We don't know why she reacted differently. We don't know if others will. Jake felt cold. You're saying this could kill people. I'm saying we don't understand the variables. Age, bloodline, individual genetic variants. Any of these could determine success or failure. If we proceed too quickly, we could create catastrophe. Before Jake could respond, alarms shrieked through the facility. Red emergency lights bathed everything in crimson. Kale's communicator crackled. A voice shouted in Sindari, fast and panicked. "What's happening?" Jake demanded. Kale's face went pale. "Krellian attack fleet, 50 ships. They've found us." The facility shuddered as the flagship's engines roared to life. Jake grabbed his uniform from a nearby chair and dressed quickly. "Take me to the bridge," he said. "I can't. You're not authorized." Jake grabbed Kale by the shoulders. "Your people are about to fight a battle they can't win. I'm a combat veteran. I can help. Take me to the bridge or get out of my way." Kale hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." They ran through corridors filled with Sindari crew members scrambling to battle stations. The fear was palpable. These people had never fought a real war. They had training but no experience, no instinct for violence. They reached the bridge in minutes. It was massive, dominated by a holographic tactical display showing the Krellian fleet in terrifying detail. Vex stood at the center, issuing orders with forced calm. Around him, officers worked their stations with barely controlled panic. Lyra was there too, wearing full combat armor, her eyes locked on the tactical display. "Lieutenant Morrison," Vex said without looking at him, "you shouldn't be here. I'm here anyway. Let me help. You're one human soldier. We're facing 50 warships crewed by Krellians who've been bred for wars since birth." Jake studied the tactical display. The Krellian fleet was moving in a hammer and anvil formation. Classic aggressive tactics. They were trying to box the Sindari in, eliminate escape vectors, then crush them with overwhelming firepower. "How many ships do you have?" Jake asked. 12 warships, 20 support vessels. "But we're not fighters, Lieutenant. Our doctrine is evasion and retreat. They've studied your tactics. They're counting on it." An explosion rocked the flagship. One of the outer support vessels had been hit. It tumbled through space, venting atmosphere and debris. "We have to break through their formation," Jake said. "Push hard at their weakest point. Force them to adjust. Create chaos." "That's suicide," an officer protested. "We'd be flying directly into their guns." "You're dying anyway," Jake shot back. "At least this way you have a chance." Vex turned to face him fully. "Explain." Jake pointed at the tactical display. "Their formation assumes you'll run. If you attack instead, they'll be caught off guard. They'll have to rotate, reposition. During that window, you punch through and scatter. Make them chase you individually instead of fighting as a coordinated fleet. It's too risky. It's survival." Another explosion. 2 more support ships destroyed. Lyra spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. "He's right. We can't outrun them this time. We have to fight." Vex looked at her, at Jake, at the tactical display showing their dwindling options. "All ships," he said into the command channel, "prepare for offensive maneuvers. Target the enemy's left flank. Full weapons, full speed. We're going through them." The bridge fell silent. Then, slowly, affirmative responses came back. Terrified but determined, the Sindari fleet turned. Engines flared. They accelerated toward the Krellian formation like arrows toward a shield wall. Jake watched the distance close. 5,000 kilometers. 4,000. 3,000. "They're not adjusting," an officer said, confused. "They're holding formation." "They don't believe you'll do it," Jake said. "They think you'll break off at the last second." 2,000 kilometers. "Fire everything," Vex ordered. The Sindari fleet opened up. Energy beams lanced across the void. Missiles streaked toward Krellian ships. The weapons were impressive, state-of-the-art, but they'd barely been tested in real combat. The Krellians returned fire. The difference was immediate. Their weapons were brutal, efficient, designed to kill. 3 Sindari warships exploded in the opening seconds, but the fleet kept coming. 1,000 kilometers. The Krellian formation finally began to adjust. But they were too slow, too confident. They'd underestimated Sindari desperation. The fleets collided. It wasn't elegant. It was chaos. Ships weaved and rolled. Weapons fire crisscrossed space in brilliant, deadly patterns. Explosions bloomed like flowers of fire and metal. The Sindari flagship plowed through the Krellian left flank, its shield screaming under the assault. A Krellian destroyer exploded beside them, so close that debris hammered against their hull. "We're through," an officer shouted. "Scatter formation," Vex ordered. "All ships break and evade." The Sindari fleet fragmented. Ships peeled off in different directions, forcing the Krellians to split their pursuit. It wasn't victory, but it was survival. For the moment. Jake watched the tactical display. The Krellians were regrouping faster than he'd hoped. They were adapting, learning. "This isn't over," he said. "They'll coordinate again. Hunt you down ship by ship." Lyra stepped beside him. "Then we need more warriors. We need others like me." "We don't have time," Kale protested, having followed him to the bridge. "The transfusion process takes hours. The genetic integration takes days."
"Then we make time," Lyra said.
She turned to Vex. "High Chancellor, I'm requesting permission to begin emergency combat transfusions. Volunteers only. We need fighters who can match Carolean aggression." Vex looked at her like she'd suggested burning down the Empire. "You're asking me to authorize mass genetic contamination during a battle. The Council will have my head." "The Council will be dead if we don't act," Lyra said flatly. Another explosion. A Sindari warship on the far edge of the formation went dark. Vex closed his eyes. Jake could see the weight of 3,000 years of tradition pressing down on him, the fear of becoming what his people had worked so hard to leave behind. Then Vex opened his eyes and nodded. "Do it." "But only volunteers. And may the ancestors forgive me." Lyra grabbed Jake's arm. "Come with me. We're going to need a lot of your blood." They ran from the bridge as the battle raged outside. Behind them, Jake heard Vex issuing orders, his voice steady despite everything. In the corridor, Lyra stopped and looked at Jake. "This is your last chance to refuse," she said. "Once we start this, there's no going back. My people will never be the same." Jake thought about Earth, about all the wars humanity had fought, about the price of survival. "Sometimes change is the only way forward," he said. "Let's make some warriors." Lyra smiled that terrible human smile. Then let's shock the galaxy. They ran toward the medical bay as explosions echoed through the ship and the future hung in the balance. Feel name. When a human warrior gave his blood to a dying alien princess. What happened next shocked all.txt. The medical bay transformed into a production line. Sindari volunteers lined up, their faces showing equal parts terror and determination. Medical staff moved frantically, preparing equipment they'd never used for procedures they'd never imagined. Jake sat in the center of it all, a needle in his arm, watching his blood flow into collection bags. Dr. Kale monitored his vitals obsessively. Your blood regenerates faster than normal human baseline, Kale said, wonder in his voice. But we're still taking too much too quickly. You need to rest. How many have we treated? Jake asked. 17. But the process is slow. Each transfusion requires precise calibration. If we rush, we risk rejection reactions. The ship shuddered violently. Weapons fire hammered the shields. Through the medical bay's viewport, Jake saw a Krellian cruiser pass within 100 meters, its guns blazing. We don't have time for slow, Jake said. Speed it up. You could die from blood loss. I could die from a Krellian missile. At least this way I'm useful. Kale started to argue, then stopped. He adjusted the collection rate. Jake felt the drain immediately. A weakness spreading through his limbs. Lyra entered the bay, her armor scorched from combat. She'd been leading boarding defense teams, repelling Krellian soldiers who'd breached the hull in 3 locations. How many warriors do we have? She asked. 17 completed transfusions, Kale reported. 15 are already combat ready. 2 are still integrating. Not enough. The Krellians are coordinating a final push. They're targeting our engines. If those go down, we're dead in space. Jake pulled the needle from his arm despite Kale's protest. He stood, swaying slightly, but forced himself steady. Then we hold the engine room, he said. How many Krellians breached? 20. Maybe more. They're cutting through bulkheads 3 decks above engineering. Jake grabbed a plasma rifle from the weapons rack. The weight felt good in his hands. Familiar, he checked the charge and maglocked 2 spare power cells to his belt. Take me there. Lyra studied him. You can barely stand. I can shoot. That's all that matters. She nodded and grabbed a weapon herself. Together they ran from the medical bay, leaving Kale shouting medical warnings behind them. The ship's interior was a war zone. Smoke-filled corridors, emergency bulkheads had sealed off damaged sections. Bodies lay scattered, both Sindari and Krellian. The dead wore expressions of shock, as if surprised that violence could be this real. They reached the engine deck in minutes. The sound of weapons fire echoed from below. Screams, roars, the wet sounds of close combat. Jake and Lyra descended the access ladder into hell. The Krellians were massive creatures, 8 feet tall with armored exoskeletons and 4 arms. Each wielded weapons designed to tear through metal and flesh alike. They moved with brutal efficiency, killing anything in their path. But they weren't expecting resistance that fought back. The 15 enhanced Sindari soldiers moved like dancers of death. They used the environment, striking from cover, using speed and precision to offset the Krellians' raw strength. Jake watched one Sindari soldier leap from a support beam, land on a Krellian's shoulders, and snap its neck with enhanced strength. It was beautiful and horrible at once. Jake raised his rifle and fired. The plasma bolt caught a Krellian in the chest, burning through its armor. It roared and turned toward him, raising a massive blade. Lyra was faster. She crossed the distance in a heartbeat and drove her combat knife through the creature's throat. It collapsed, gurgling. "Stay behind me," she ordered. "Not a chance." They moved into the chaos together. Jake fired controlled bursts, dropping targets with precision. Lyra fought hand to hand, her enhanced body making her nearly unstoppable. The other Sindari warriors rallied around them, their fear transforming into something fiercer. A Krellian commander, larger than the rest, emerged from a smoke-filled corridor. It carried a weapon that looked like it could tear the ship apart. It aimed at the main reactor. "Stop it!" Jake shouted. 3 Sindari soldiers charged. The Krellian cut them down with sweeping fire. 2 died instantly. The third crawled away, trailing blood. Jake ran forward, firing as he moved. His shots pinged off the Krellian's heavy armor. It turned toward him, raising its weapon. Then Lyra crashed into it from above. She'd climbed the support structure and dropped 20 feet onto the creature's back. Her knife flashed. Once, twice, 3 times. She targeted joints, weak points, places where armor plates met flesh. The Krellian roared and threw itself backward, trying to crush her against a bulkhead. Lyra rolled away at the last second. The creature's armor cracked against the metal wall. Jake saw his opening. He aimed carefully and fired a sustained burst at the damaged armor. The plasma burned through. The Krellian screamed and fell. Silence descended on the engine room. Smoke drifted through the air. Emergency lights cast everything in red. Of the 20 Krellians who'd breached, all were dead. But 8 Sindari soldiers had died defending this room. 8 warriors who'd been civilians 2 days ago. Lyra stood among the bodies, her chest heaving, her armor covered in alien blood. She looked at Jake with eyes that held too much pain. "Is this what it means to be warriors?" she asked quietly. "To watch your people die?" "Yes," Jake said honestly, "and to keep fighting anyway." The communicator on the wall crackled to life. Vex's voice came through, strained but controlled. "All stations, the Krellian fleet is retreating. I repeat, they're retreating." "We've won." Cheers erupted across the ship's channels. Relief, joy, disbelief. But in the engine room, the enhanced soldiers stood silent among their dead. Victory didn't feel like Jake had expected it would. Lyra walked to one of the fallen, a young male whose silver skin was now stained crimson. She knelt beside him and closed his eyes. "His name was Torin," she said. "He volunteered immediately. He said he wanted to protect his children. Now his children have no father." Jake knelt beside her. "He died making sure his children have a future. That matters. Does it, or did we just trade one kind of destruction for another?" Before Jake could answer, "Doctor," Kale's voice came over the communicator, urgent and panicked. "Princess Lyra, we have a problem. One of the enhanced soldiers, something's wrong. You need to come to medical immediately." Lyra and Jake exchanged glances and ran. They found medical bay in chaos. The volunteer Kyle mentioned, a middle-aged female named Sarah, was restrained on a medical table. Her body convulsed. Her veins glowed red, but the color was wrong. Too bright, too intense. "What's happening to her?" Lyra demanded. Kale's hands shook as he monitored readouts. "The human DNA is overwriting her Sindari genetics too aggressively. It's not integrating, it's replacing. Her cellular structure is breaking down." Jake watched in horror as Sarah's silver skin began to darken. Her features started to shift. She was changing, becoming something neither Sindari nor human. "Can you stop it?" he asked. "I don't know. I've never seen anything like this." Sarah's eyes opened. They were completely red now. No gold, no pupils, just crimson fury. She broke the restraints like they were paper. Medical staff scattered. Sarah stood, her body rippling with uncontrolled power. When she spoke, her voice was distorted, alien. "Burn. Everything burns. Must burn. She grabbed the plasma cutter from a nearby table and ignited it. The blade blazed white-hot. "Sarah," Lyra said carefully, stepping forward, "you need to fight this. You're still Sindari. You're still yourself." Sarah laughed, and the sound was madness. No more Sindari. No more human. Just fire. Just rage. Just... She lunged. Lyra barely dodged. The plasma cutter passed inches from her throat. Sarah moved with inhuman speed, faster even than the enhanced soldiers, but without control, pure aggression, with no thought behind it. Jake raised his rifle. "Lyra, get clear! Don't shoot her! She's my subject, my responsibility!" Sarah attacked again, swinging wildly. She hit a medical console and cleaved it in half. Sparks exploded.
An alarm shrieked. Other enhanced soldiers entered the bay, weapons ready.
They formed a perimeter, but Jake could see the fear in their eyes. They were looking at what they might become. Lyra tried to get close, to restrain Sarah without killing her, but Sarah was beyond reasoning, beyond saving. The plasma cutter swung toward a group of medical staff, civilians who had no chance of dodging. Jake made the decision in a heartbeat. He fired. The plasma bolt hit Sarah in the chest. She staggered, looked down at the wound, then looked at Jake with those terrible red eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she collapsed. Kale rushed forward, but Jake already knew Sarah was dead. The enhanced soldiers stared at her body, at what the human blood had made her, at what they all might become. Lyra turned to Jake, her expression unreadable. "You killed her. I saved those people. You executed my subject." "I did what warriors do," Jake said quietly. "I made the hard choice, just like you'll have to make again and again if you want to survive." Lyra said nothing. She just stared at Sarah's body as medical staff covered it with a sheet. Outside, the stars remained cold and distant. The Krellians were gone, but they'd be back. And next time, Jake knew, the price of survival might be even higher, field name. When a human warrior gave his blood to a dying alien princess, what happened next shocked all. .txt. The Sindari High Council convened 3 days after the battle. Jake stood before them in a chamber vast enough to hold 1,000 beings. Crystalline walls projected the faces of council members from across the empire. Some appeared in person. Others attended through holographic representation. All wore expressions of judgment. Vex stood at Jake's side. Lyra stood at his other. Both had spoken for hours, defending their actions, explaining the necessity of what they'd done. Now it was Jake's turn. The Grand Arbiter, oldest of the council members, spoke with a voice like grinding stone. "Lieutenant Jake Morrison of Earth, you stand accused of genetic contamination, unauthorized medical experimentation, and the corruption of Sindari purity. How do you answer these charges?" Jake looked up at the ancient being. He'd faced death 12 times in the past week. Politicians didn't scare him anymore. "I answer that I saved lives. I gave your people a chance to fight when they had none. And yes, people died. Sarah died. But thousands more lived because we acted." "You speak of necessity," another council member said, "but necessity does not erase consequence. One of our people became a monster because of your blood. How many more will follow?" "We're working on screening protocols," Dr. Kale interjected from the witness section. "We've identified genetic markers that predict rejection. We can prevent another Sarah. We can make this safe." "Safe?" The Grand Arbiter's laugh was bitter. "There is nothing safe about reintroducing the savage genes. You ask us to become killers, to abandon 3,000 years of evolution, to regress into the very monsters our ancestors fought to leave behind." Lyra stepped forward. "With respect, Grand Arbiter, our ancestors didn't leave monsters behind. They left survival behind. They left the ability to defend themselves. They chose extinction over violence, and that choice is killing us now. Murmurs rippled through the council, some angry, some thoughtful. The Krellians will return, Lyra continued. Not in months.
In weeks. They know we're weak.
They know we can't truly fight. This battle was a surprise. Next time, they'll be prepared. Next time, they'll bring more ships, more soldiers. And if we haven't changed, if we're still the same helpless prey, they'll wipe us out. Then perhaps that is our fate, an elder council member said quietly. Perhaps extinction with honor is preferable to survival as killers. Jake felt anger surge through him. That's easy to say when you're not the one dying. When you're not watching your people burn because they can't defend themselves. You want to talk about honor? There's no honor in letting your species die because you're too proud to adapt. The chamber fell silent. The Grand Arbiter leaned forward. You dare lecture us, human? Your species has known nothing but war. You've turned violence into art. You celebrate aggression. Why should we become like you? Because we're still here, Jake said simply. Humanity faced extinction a dozen times. Disease, war, environmental collapse. We survived because we refused to give up. We adapted. We changed. We did whatever it took to keep going. That's not savagery. That's resilience. He looked around at all the council members. You think having the capacity for violence makes you a monster? Look at Lyra. She has my blood. She has aggression. She can kill, but she's still Sindari. She still values life. She still creates beauty and seeks knowledge. The savage genes didn't erase who she was. They completed her. One success does not prove viability, the Grand Arbiter countered, and one failure proves the danger. Sarah died screaming, her mind consumed by rage. How many more will we lose to madness? As many as it takes, Lyra said, her voice hard. As many as volunteer. As many as understand that some prices must be paid for survival. Sarah knew the risks. She chose anyway. Honor her choice instead of using her death as an excuse for cowardice. The word hung in the air like a blade. Calling the High Council cowards was unthinkable, unforgivable. But no one refuted her. Vex spoke then, his voice measured. The Council must decide. But know this. The enhanced soldiers who fought in that battle, they've changed the equation. The Krellians expected easy prey. They found warriors. Word will spread. Other hostile species will hear what happened. They'll think twice before attacking us. Or they'll attack harder, someone argued, seeing us as a growing threat instead of easy targets. Then we'll be ready, Lyra said, not just with enhanced soldiers, but with new tactics, new strategies. We'll learn from humanity, from their experience, from their mistakes. We'll become warriors without losing our souls. The Grand Arbiter closed his eyes. You ask the impossible, Princess. You ask us to walk a line between peace and war, between enlightenment and savagery. History teaches that such balance cannot hold. History teaches that species who refuse to adapt go extinct. Jake countered. You have a choice. Evolve or die. It's that simple. The council chambers filled with debate. Arguments flew. Voices raised. For hours they deliberated while Jake, Lyra, and Vex waited. Finally, the Grand Arbiter raised his hand. Silence fell. We have reached a decision, he said. By narrow majority, the Council authorizes continued research into genetic enhancement, under strict oversight, with mandatory screening. Volunteers only, and with human advisors to guide the process. Relief flooded through Jake. Beside him, Lyra exhaled slowly. However, the Grand Arbiter continued. Lieutenant Jake Morrison is hereby banned from Sindari space for 1 standard year. Your presence is too controversial, too divisive. You will return to Earth while we determine if this path leads to salvation or ruin. Jake nodded. He'd expected something like this. I understand. And Princess Lyra, the Grand Arbiter said, his voice softening slightly, you will lead the Enhanced Warrior Program. The responsibility for every success and every failure falls on you. Can you bear that weight? Lyra met the elder's gaze without flinching. I can. I will. Then this council is adjourned. The holograms vanished. The council members departed. Soon only Jake, Lyra, and Vex remained in the vast empty chamber. You did it, Vex said quietly. You actually convinced them.
Barely, Jake replied.
And they could still change their minds. They won't, Lyra said. She walked to the chamber's viewport, looking out at the stars. Because they're afraid. And fear makes people practical. They'll accept enhancement as the lesser evil. Jake joined her at the viewport. What happens now? Now I build an army, train warriors, prepare for the next Krellian attack. Try to save my people without destroying what makes us Sindari. That's a hell of a job, she smiled sadly. It is. But you gave me the tools to do it. Your blood, your example, your stubborn human refusal to quit. I'll miss you, Jake said, surprising himself with his honesty. Lyra turned to face him. For a long moment she just looked at him. Then she placed her hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. You changed me, Jake Morrison, made me into something impossible, something beautiful and terrible. I'll carry that gift for the rest of my life, and when historians tell the story of how the Sindari learned to fight again, your name will be there. The human warrior who gave his blood and saved a princess. Sounds like a fairy tale. Perhaps it is. But all great changes start with impossible stories. She stepped back. Go home, Jake. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them that humanity has allies who are willing to fight now, who remember that survival sometimes requires hard choices. Jake nodded. He started to leave, then stopped. Lyra? Don't lose yourself. Don't let the warrior consume the princess. I won't, she promised. You showed me it's possible to be both. I'll show my people the same. 3 days later, Jake boarded a transport bound for Earth. Through the viewport, he watched the Sindari flagship grow smaller. Somewhere on that vessel, Lyra was training new warriors, creating an army that shouldn't exist, fighting for a future her ancestors had thought impossible. The transport jumped to faster than light, and the Sindari disappeared behind them. Jake leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. He was going home. But he knew this wasn't the end. The Krellians would return. Other threats would emerge, and when they did, humanity wouldn't face them alone. The galaxy had changed. The Sindari had teeth now, and a human warrior had given them the bite they needed to survive. Jake smiled. Sometimes the greatest gift you could give wasn't peace. Sometimes it was the strength to fight for it. The stars streaked past, carrying him home, carrying him toward whatever came next. Behind him, an empire learned to be warriors. Ahead of him, Earth waited with new questions, new challenges, new wars to fight. But for now, in this moment between battles, Jake allowed himself to rest. He'd earned it. They all had. Asterisk, field name. When a human warrior gave his blood to a dying alien princess, what happened next shocked all.tx.